So over the weekend, we had Trump host Putin in Alaska. The location itself was a bit controversial because it was technically U.S. soil, and a lot of people were criticizing Trump for inviting, Putin, an indicted war criminal, to American territory. But as Trump and the Trump administration said, that there was no good location for this meeting. But it was a meeting that I think really needed to take place. The issue is that really nothing has come out of it. What was hoped was that there would have been some sort of ceasefire agreement. The problem is that the Ukrainians really aren't on board with giving up territory. Right now, the Russians control about 18.4% of Ukraine. That's quite a bit of territory, and what they're asking for a ceasefire is even more territory, right? So entire regions that they say partially occupied, they want the entire administrative region there. So it's interesting what anyone who had been observing the situation really couldn't have expected much. Right before the meeting took place, we heard that initially it was going to be a one-on-one with Trump and Putin, but then it changed and they brought in their Secretary of State Rubin, and Witkoff came in, and then Lavrov from with Putin. So there were about 6 people in the room at the time having these discussions and coming up with various ways of trying to resolve this. But the issue is you didn't have a resolution. You said, yes, Trump said that some progress was made. We don't know what exactly was made, how much progress is being made towards, say, a lasting ceasefire, or are we talking about, a temporary ceasefire so that the killing ends, but temporarily, and then ultimately, having a final solution to whatever this settlement would be to that. What I see here is that Trump is not in the best position. Putin has him in the palm of his hands, really. What we're seeing is that, time seems to be on Putin's side. He's in no rush, really. All the tools that they had on the Russians really haven't been working this entire, past several years, whether it was sanctions, whether it was, allowing more aggressive use of U.S. weapons or European weapons. They really haven't had the impact that they had hoped. This hasn't slowed down the Russian assault. In fact, we're hearing it in a number of places that the Russians have, in fact, will be making more offensive onslaughts and taking over more territory. This is something that the Ukrainians have, factored in and are realizing. But again, they're not willing to. At least Zelensky isn't willing to give up territory. It's a difficult situation. If I was a European leader, I would be terrified because, say you go down the road of appeasement and say everybody, pressurizes the Ukrainians and especially Zelensky into giving up, say, that 20% of their territory. That becomes a launching pad for Russians to be able to launch attacks in the future into mainland Europe, right? And the Europeans certainly do not have the appetite to be losing, say, 100,000, 200,000 people over a year-long period or even shorter. They're simply not in it with war, right? I think at most they'll be relying on their technology, and drones and cyber weapons only have so much that they can do on the ground, right? They really can't change boundaries and front lines the way men and tanks and missiles and guns and the Air Force does. So what we're looking at, if there isn't some radical change, is just more of the same for the coming year or two, maybe, unless, of course, something changes. The only hope I have is that Trump is the type of person who can bring about something radically different. We heard Putin himself say that if Trump was in office, this war probably would never have started, right? And that's an interesting point to take, because the Democrats who you see, or at least are portrayed in much of the media as the saner, more rational party, or the party that doesn't want to have war and so much violence, happens to be the one that has perpetuated much of these conflicts that are happening right now, whether it's Gaza or even in Ukraine. And I think there is some veracity to the statement that if Trump was in power at the time, this onslaught would not have taken place, and there would have been some sort of negotiated settlement at that point. We do seem see Trump emerging as some sort of a dove, and he's brought about ceasefires and ended wars in a number of places. Look at Pakistan and India. Look at the Cambodia and Thailand issue. He's looked at places in Africa, and he's dealing with conflicts there. So I think there are about 6 that he's claiming. Let's see how many actually come about. But yeah, it seems to be an interesting place. There hasn't been much movement. There have been European leaders who've gone and talked to Trump at the White House. This show of force that they demonstrated, nothing really has changed. And if anything, the Russians have really amped up their attacks, and they've been having some of the most violent attacks in recent days, which have taken place after these meetings. So it's interesting times now.
The revolution will be live.